Welcome back to the show. Today we're diving into some really insightful writing from Ajmal,
Oh, yeah.
respected author who shares his thoughts on his blog, theborderovermind.com. It's called The Freedom of Feeling Like a Grain of Sand.
Okay.
And it got me thinking, have you ever considered that feeling small
Yeah.
could actually be a source of peace and freedom?
It is a fascinating concept, right? This idea that, our perceived insignificance
Yeah,
could actually be empowering.
it really is. In his blog post, he uses this powerful image of standing in a vast, silent desert.
Wow.
Feeling like just one tiny grain of sand among countless others.
Oh, yeah, I can see it.
It immediately makes you think about feeling overwhelmed by daily anxieties and how that sense of being small kind of connects to it all.
That's really brilliant. I mean, that feeling of being a single grain of sand in the desert,
Yeah,
it can definitely evoke a sense of insignificance, maybe even vulnerability.
right.
But Ajmal argues that within that feeling lies a surprising sense of peace. He calls it granular perspective therapy.
Granular perspective therapy.
Yeah.
I love that. So how does he explain that idea?
Wow.
How does acknowledging our smallness in the grand scheme of things become therapeutic?
He suggests that it helps us challenge this inflated sense of self-importance
Yeah.
that so many of us struggle with these days.
Totally.
Think about it.
Yeah.
How much social media validates our opinions,
Right.
creates these echo chambers where our own perspective can feel like the only one that matters.
Yeah.
And then on top of that,
Right.
there's this constant cultural messaging that's telling us that, true fulfillment comes from achieving great things,
Right.
striving for more and never settling.
Oh, for sure.
It can be so overwhelming.
Absolutely. It's like we're all under this pressure to be exceptional,
Yeah,
to leave our mark on the world.
exactly.
But trying to live up to those expectations all the time, that feels impossible.
It is.
Yeah.
And that's where the burden of expectation comes in.
Yeah.
Ajmal argues that this inflated self-importance we carry leads to a whole host of unrealistic expectations.
Okay.
We end up feeling like we have to be everything to everyone,
Oh, yeah.
constantly checking things off those endless to-do lists,
Ugh, I'm at.
and meeting everyone else's needs before our own.
It never ends.
And when we inevitably fall short, which we all do,
Of course.
it can feel catastrophic.
Right. We failed in some fundamental way.
Exactly.
But if we embrace this granular perspective, as Ajmal calls it, does that mean we just ignore those responsibilities?
Wow.
And stop trying to achieve anything? Is that what he's suggesting?
That's a great question, and it's something that Ajmal addresses directly in his writing.
Okay.
He's not advocating for passivity or irresponsibility.
Got it.
It's more about recognizing that while our individual actions are important, they don't necessarily hold the weight of the world. We can shift our perspective without giving up on our goals or obligations.
So it's more about finding that balance,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Recognizing that we have a role to play,
Right.
but it doesn't have to define our entire sense of worth.
Right. It's about releasing that need for constant control,
Okay.
for needing to micromanage every aspect of our lives and everyone else's.
Yeah.
We can still, care for our loved ones, contribute to our communities,
Right.
strive for personal growth,
Yeah.
but without feeling like every outcome hinges solely on us.
That makes a lot of sense. But how does that actually play out in our daily lives?
Well,
Say you're facing a challenging situation at work or maybe struggling with a personal setback. How does this granular perspective help in those moments?
Ajmal uses a beautiful analogy in his blog post.
Okay.
He compares our worries to the fleeting winds of the desert.
Wow.
They come and go, sometimes strong and intense,
Yeah.
sometimes barely noticeable, but the desert itself remains unchanged. Those worries, those anxieties are a natural part of life,
Right.
but they don't have to define us.
That's a powerful image.
Yeah.
So instead of getting swept away by every worry that pops up,
Right.
we can acknowledge it, see it for what it is, a temporary wind, and let it pass without letting it shake our foundation.
Precisely. We can learn from those worries.
Yeah.
Understand what they're trying to tell us,
Okay.
but also recognize that they're just a small part of this ever-changing landscape of our lives. Our value
Right.
is not dependent on those fleeting winds.
This all ties back to that feeling of standing in the vast desert as just one grain of sand, right?
Yeah.
At first, it might feel insignificant, almost daunting, but there's also a certain beauty in that.
Right.
A sense of calm that comes from recognizing that we're part of something much larger than ourselves.
Absolutely. And within that largeness, Within that sense of belonging
Yeah.
to something vast and beyond our control, there's a profound sense of freedom. Freedom to make mistakes, to take risks, to simply be without the constant pressure to prove our worth to the world. It's a powerful shift in perspective.
It really is.
Yeah.
So ultimately, what Ajmal is offering with this granular perspective therapy
Yeah.
is a framework for managing anxiety, for finding a sense of peace and freedom within the chaos of everyday life.
Exactly.
A way to navigate those inevitable challenges without letting them consume us.
He's reminding us that true freedom doesn't come from external validation or achieving some arbitrary definition of success.
Okay.
It comes from understanding our place within the grand scheme of things,
Right.
accepting our granularity and finding peace in that.
It's a profound concept.
Yeah.
And I think his writing does a beautiful job of articulating it.
Yeah.
Now, for our listeners who are interested in exploring these ideas further, where can they find more of Ajmal's work?
You can find more of his insightful writing and reflections on his blog,
Okay.
theborderofmind.com.
Got it.
He explores a wide range of topics related to self-discovery, creativity, and finding meaning in the modern world.
Yeah.
It's definitely worth a visit.
Absolutely. And I think it's a perfect example of how exploring different perspectives,
Right.
like Ajmal's, can help us navigate the complexities of life with more clarity and purpose.
For sure.
So before we wrap up, what's one key takeaway you think our listeners should reflect on after hearing about this granular perspective?
For me, the most powerful takeaway is this idea that embracing our smallness isn't about diminishing our importance.
Okay.
It's actually about expanding our understanding of what truly matters.
Oh, I see.
It's about recognizing that we're all interconnected,
Yeah.
part of a larger tapestry,
Right.
and that our individual journeys, while unique, contribute to something far greater than ourselves.
It's beautifully said. It's about finding a sense of belonging and purpose, not through external achievements,
Right.
but through recognizing our inherent connection to everything around us.
Yeah.
It's almost a paradox, isn't it?
It is.
The idea that by embracing our limitations, our granularity, we can actually access a greater sense of freedom and purpose.
It is a paradox, but I think Ajmal articulates it beautifully.
Yeah.
He encourages us to find freedom in letting go of the need to control everything,
Okay.
to accept that there's beauty in the unknown, in the vastness of existence that extends far beyond our individual grasp.
And that can be such a relief, can't it?
It can.
Letting go of that pressure to constantly strive,
Yeah.
to prove ourselves, to measure up to some impossible standard.
For sure.
Instead, we can focus on being present in our lives,
Right.
on appreciating the small moments, and on finding joy in the simple act of being.
Exactly. It's about finding contentment in the present moment,
Yeah.
in the grain of sand that we are,
Okay.
rather than constantly chasing after some elusive future ideal.
This has been such an insightful conversation.
It has.
Ajmal's work truly offers a refreshing perspective on how to navigate the anxieties and pressures of modern life.
For sure.
I encourage all our listeners to check out his blog, theborderofamind.com,
Definitely.
and explore his ideas for themselves.
Yeah,
It's a treasure trove of wisdom and inspiration.
I agree. His writing is both thought-provoking and deeply comforting. It reminds us that we're not alone in our struggle,
Right.
and that there's a different way of being in the world.
Yeah.
A way that embraces our granularity as a source of strength and freedom.
Yeah. So to wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with a question to ponder.
Okay?
What would it look like for you to embrace your own granular perspective? How might this shift in thinking change the way you approach your daily life, your relationships, and your own sense of self? Keep those questions in mind as you move through your day,
Right.
and see what insights emerge. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning,
Sounds good.
and keep diving deep.